All right, guys. So Trump seems to be in a little bit of a panic mode right now. Ever since Joe Biden dropped out and Kamala became his opponent, he hasn't been able to find his footing, right? He's been a little bit lost in the sauce. He went from having a potential landslide victory against Biden on the horizon to now it's basically a coin toss, 50-50, or maybe even Kamala has a slight edge over him. And one of the main reasons that I think that Kamala actually has a decent shot in November is because of Trump's record when it comes to abortion. Now, obviously, he appointed the Supreme Court justices who then went on to overturn Roe v. Wade. And then you had conservative states all across the country who passed these extreme right-wing draconian abortion crackdowns, right? One of those states is Florida, where Trump happens to be a resident. And in Florida, they've had for a while now this 6-week abortion ban that was in place. Now, they have a ballot measure that's coming up. And this is actually taking place in multiple key swing states, right? Which could alter the outcome of the 2024 election. I think there's one in Arizona. I think there's one in North Carolina. I'd have to double check on that. But in Florida, they have a ballot measure that is basically a yes or no. Do you want to overturn this 6-week abortion ban and to enshrine abortion rights into the Florida state constitution? And so Trump is being asked about this, obviously, because of his record when it comes to abortion, because he's running for president, but also because he is going to directly be able to vote on this ballot measure as a resident of Florida. Now, he has been flip-flopping back and forth on this over the last couple of days because he simultaneously doesn't want to piss off his anti-abortion, right, evangelical base. So he doesn't want to piss them off, but he also doesn't want to further alienate himself from the overwhelming majority of the country that wanted Roe v. Wade to stay in place, that supports the right to choose. And so this first clip that we're going to watch, this is from NBC News from a couple of days ago, and he's asked how he's going to vote on this ballot measure. Let's go ahead and listen to how he handled this.
Turn Roe, and you want abortion to be a states' rights issue. In Florida, the state that you are a resident of, there's an abortion-related amendment on the ballot to overturn the 6-week ban in Florida. How are you going to vote on that?
Well, I think the 6-week is too short. It has to be more time, and so and I've told them that I want more weeks.
So you'll vote in favor of the amendment?
I am going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. Look, just so you understand, everybody wanted Roe v. Wade terminated for years, 52 years. I got it done. They wanted it to go back to the states. Exceptions are very important for me, for Ronald Reagan, for others that have navigated this very, very interesting and difficult path.
Okay, so off the bat, you can tell he's very uncomfortable talking about this. He reverts back to this easily disprovable lie that, well, everybody wanted Roe v. Wade to be overturned. No, they didn't. That's not true. The overwhelming majority of the American people wanted Roe v. Wade to stay in place, so he's just pulling that out of his ass. It's completely false. He also says, when he's asked, how are you going to vote on this? He sort of walks a tightrope and doesn't say he's going to vote yes or no in favor or against the ballot measure, but says, I'm going to vote in favor of more than 6 weeks. Well, that's not on the ballot measure. The ballot measure is, I believe it goes up to viability, which would be 24 weeks. So are you saying you're supporting that? Are you saying you're going to vote yes on the ballot measure? Are you going to vote no on the ballot measure, but you also want, more than 6 weeks to potentially be on the table? You're not being specific, number one. You're not giving a definitive timeline for what you actually want. And you're not being specific when it comes to the actual ballot measure that you're being asked about. It's a pretty simple ballot measure, right? Yes or no. And so he can't really answer that question because, again, he's trying to not piss off both sides of this equation. Now, the other question that I would have is, do you believe that abortion is murder or not? Because that's how conservatives like Trump talk about this. Is it murder or is it not murder? Because if it's murder, then I don't know how you can possibly say, as somebody who believes in that, well, I think murder is okay for 6 weeks, or I think murder is okay for 12 weeks, or for 16 weeks, or for 24 weeks. To me, that doesn't really make sense. Either you don't really believe it's murder, or you're saying you're okay with murder for a certain period of time. None of that makes any sense to me, right? So there's that aspect of it. So this was his first response, I believe, when he was asked about this. This ended up pissing off a bunch of, his supporters, and we'll show you a couple of examples of that here in a second. He also did come out, though, and again, this is him trying to sort of moderate himself on the issue. So here from NBC News, he also came out and he says he wants to make IVF, in vitro fertilization treatments, paid for by the government or insurance companies if elected. So he wants IVF to be protected. He wants that to be a right. And he also wants insurance companies to be forced to pay for it, right? So again, we had a state like Alabama, for example, where they had a court ruling that essentially banned IVF. There was this massive uproar. I believe the state legislature, backtracked on that essentially after the uproar. But this is him again trying to seem like he's more of a moderate on the issue. He also tweeted out, I don't know what you would call it, but he basically just tweeted out, "My administration will be great for women and their reproductive rights." Okay. Which, number one, is not true based on your track record and based on what many Republicans want from a second Trump term. But it's also interesting because he says reproductive rights. That's not the typical language of so-called pro-life Republicans. This is the kind of language that you would hear from pro-choice advocates, right? Or pro-choice politicians, right? Reproductive rights. And so he's basically, again, trying to tamp down the criticism against him for overturning Roe v. Wade and all of the consequences that have come from that. Now, you also see in this Politico headline that this angered pro-life advocates, right? Angers pro-life advocates. So some examples of this infighting, this civil war when it comes to the issue of abortion, just over the last couple of days. Here we got Matt Walsh. He says Amendment 4 in Florida will enshrine a right to murder children up until the moment of birth. I actually don't even think that timeline is true. Again, I think it goes up to so-called viability, which is like 24 weeks. But he says it will enshrine the right to murder children up until the moment of birth. It is an abject evil, radical leftism at its most extreme and bloodthirsty. Trump needs to make absolutely clear that he will vote against it. Aligning with Planned Parenthood and the radical left to defend infanticide would not only be morally abominable, but politically suicidal. I completely disagree with that, right? I mean, if Trump was taking more of a pro-choice stance, then that would objectively be more popular amongst the American people. But okay, he says it's political suicide. It totally demoralizes and alienates your base for the sake of appealing to people who won't vote for you regardless. That part of it is probably true, actually. He says this is an easy call. So, I mean, I guess at least for somebody like Matt Walsh, like, he's being consistent, I guess, is like the praise you would give to Matt Walsh in this situation. He says it's, murder, that it's infanticide, that it's genocide against children. And so you can have no sort of easing up on it, right? Total ban. That's what he's in favor of. Trump is, a monster for even thinking about voting in favor of this ballot measure. So again, you have a lot of his people, I guess what you would think would be his people, who are turning against him, right, for that statement. Now, we also had this, Michael Knowles, who was asked, what's the objection to IVF? So he's against IVF. And Michael Knowles says, as a practical matter, most persons created through IVF are destroyed or frozen indefinitely. He's talking about frozen embryos, guys. He's not talking about like alive human children. He's talking about like tiny, imperceptible embryos. That's what he's talking about. They are destroyed or frozen indefinitely. Well, I guess that's true, but he says, additionally, IVF establishes the domination of technology over the origin and destiny of human life, asserts a perverse right to a child, and severs the unitive from the procreative. I'm going to let you guys try to figure out what in the fuck this guy is talking about. We're talking about IVF. I believe it was Tim Walz had one of his kids through IVF, and he named her Hope, because they had been trying to have kids for so long, and then they were finally able to do it. Are you saying that, like, his kid shouldn't be alive, that's like an abomination to humanity? These people are just freaks. What do they think banning IVF would poll at amongst the American people? I would be shocked if banning IVF in this country polled above like 5 to 10%. There's no chance. And you want Trump to come out against IVF? You want him to come out fully against abortion? Are you talking about even in cases of, rape or incest or for the life of the mother? Trump says he's in favor of those exceptions. We know, of course, in practice, they don't really mean much, right? But what exactly is the advice that these people are trying to give to Trump? Anyways, after all of this backlash that he was facing from conservative groups and pundits and politicians and all of that, he comes out and he says he's going to vote against the abortion measure. He's going to vote against it. So he completely backtracked, completely changed his initial comment there. So he's facing pressure from all sides, and he's crumbling. He's crumbling. These were some of his comments when he was sort of backtracking on it. Let's go ahead and listen to this.
Voting yes or no on Amendment 4 in Florida?
So I think 6 weeks, you need more time than 6 weeks. I've disagreed with that right from the early primaries. When I heard about it, I disagreed with it. At the same time, the Democrats are radical because the 9 months is just a ridiculous situation where you can do an abortion in the 9th month. And, you know, some of the states like Minnesota and other states have it where you could actually execute the baby after birth. And all of that stuff is unacceptable. So I'll be voting no for that reason.
Okay, so now he's voting no. So he flip-flopped back on it. He also tosses in there just the complete made-up lie that, oh, Democrats are in favor of post-birth abortions, right? You have the child and then they execute the child. What are we doing here, guys? It kind of is just genuinely amazing that this is, because this is not just him. There are other Republicans who say this, other pundits who bring this point up, and it's just like completely made up. Like you can just live in a completely alternate fantasy land and just run with it. Just keep saying it over and over and over again. That's not true. What are you talking about? Post-birth abortions? Executing children after they're born? That's not happening. That's not a thing. Even in the cases of like a, close to term abortion, right? In the 3rd trimester, those are exceptionally rare. Exceptionally rare. The vast majority happen in the first 2 trimesters. And I believe actually the vast majority happened in just the 1st trimester. But when we're talking about 3rd trimester abortions, we're already talking about a tiny fraction of the total. And most of the time in those situations, it is for a specific health-related reason. Most pregnant women don't just like carry a baby for 9 months and then just randomly wake up one day and decide, never mind. Never mind. I'm done with this, right? These are not just like flippant decisions. We're talking about, matters of life and death in certain circumstances. And I don't know if you guys saw the DNC. I was there. And one of the things that I noticed is that they kept showing these ads of stories of women across the country who have lived in conservative states and have almost died because of the abortion bans that have been put into effect. Even in states where they claim to have these so-called exceptions, right? You basically have to be dying, like in the process of dying, in order to get an abortion for the life of the mother exception, right? And some of those ads targeting Trump have been fucking brutal. Brutal. And so if they're playing those across these swing states, that's going to be a big issue for Trump. That's going to be a big issue. But again, he can't piss off his own base, who is firmly pro-life or anti-choice. And so he's having to backtrack on it. I mean, it's just pathetic, man. What do you actually believe in? What do you actually want? What's your threshold? He can't define an answer. I mean, he's effectively here saying, I think there should be more than 6 weeks allowed, but I'm still going to vote against the amendment that would allow for more than 6 weeks. It's just a complete contradiction, right? Now, we also have this here, because at the same time that there's this abortion amendment on the ballot in Florida, they also have a marijuana legalization amendment on the ballot. And Trump also came out in favor of this. Kind of surprising, given the fact that you didn't really take any action on that whatsoever when you were in the White House for 4 years. But now Trump, he puts his finger in the wind and he says, okay, these things are popular, and so I'm going to, pretend that I'm on that side of the equation. Trump signals support for Florida marijuana legalization. His statement comes a day after announcing he would vote against a separate ballot measure that would expand abortion rights in Florida. Now, I think, again, he's just looking at the polling on this, guys. A new Fox News poll released on Friday shows both amendments could pass, with 69% of people in favor of the abortion amendment. 69%. I believe they need 60% to successfully pass the ballot measure. It's not 50%. I think it's 60%. But they're comfortably clearing that, according to this poll here. And it's also 66% in favor of legalizing marijuana. So this is a big problem. Guys, this isn't a state like Florida. Florida, not exactly like a liberal bastion. And we've seen this in other conservative states as well. When they have abortion ballot measures, they pretty much always pass. Pretty much always. So this is a big problem, man. You fucked up. They've been working towards it for decades and decades and decades to overturn Roe v. Wade, and you got what you wanted. And now instead of it being something you're like dangling, in front of evangelical voters and it's like a fake promise, right, that you can potentially win votes off of, now it's a real fucking thing. Now it's actually affecting real people's lives in drastic ways that people are not happy with. So this is a big problem. Some evidence of that here. from Tom Bonier. He says, I graphed the percent of new registrants who were women for every day over the past 2+ years. This is just the 15 states where we have files updated since the 7/21 candidate change of Biden to Kamala. Look at that spike in late July. The Harris effect is adding to the Dobbs effect, surpassing 2022 peaks. So this is basically a graph showing you women represented as new registered voters, right? And so obviously, right after Roe v. Wade was overturned in the Dobbs decision, you had a massive spike of female voter registration, I think for obvious reasons. The spike that you're seeing right now, with not only the Dobbs effect, but also with Kamala Harris being sort of a more, I guess, valid or a more believable champion of abortion rights than Joe Biden, you have this massive spike in female voter registration. So you also have at the same time, by the way, a huge gender divide between Trump and Kamala supporters. Women vastly disproportionately support Kamala. Men vastly disproportionately are trending towards Donald Trump. So it's a huge gender divide in this election as well. Now, in terms of the overall state of the race right now, this is Nate Silver, and his polling, I think, is usually pretty accurate, right? In the aggregate, he's basically just compiling a bunch of different polls, and he rates them and gives them different weights in his scale and has his own methodology that you can read if you want to go through this entire piece. It'll be down in the description, but this is his overall. He has it right now, right? You can see where Biden drops out around here. At that time, Trump was leading pretty comfortably, and then it switched. And now Kamala Harris is at about 49%, and Trump is at about 45.5%. So she's up by, 3 and a bit % nationally over Trump. Now that's about where you need to be as a Democrat to potentially squeeze through a victory. You can go state by state here, poll by poll. Looks like in Arizona, Trump still has a slight lead. Florida, pretty solid in Trump's favor. Georgia, Harris has a slight lead. Michigan, Harris is winning. Minnesota, Harris is winning. Nevada. I mean, I think the real key swing states for this election, it's going to come down to Arizona, Pennsylvania, and Georgia, basically. Those are the 3 key states that I think either candidate has to win in order to, potentially pull off a victory here. So, I mean, it's neck and neck. It's neck and neck. I say that Kamala has a slight edge, but it's a very slight edge. It's nothing serious. Anything could change. You could have, a massive war breaks out in the Middle East. You could have some economic catastrophe that happens, and this could go one way or another. Anything could change on a dime, right? We have no idea what's going to happen. So, as of right now, it's a 50-50. It really is a toss-up and a 50-50. So I'll leave it off there. Trump, flip-flopping back and forth, seems to be in a little bit of a panic state. Kamala Harris is not Joe Biden. They have many of the same positions, but, Kamala Harris's brain hasn't fallen out of her skull like Joe Biden's has, and she can speak in semi-coherent sentences, and so that's something that Trump is struggling against. It seems like he's really struggling against it. We also have at the same time, by the way, I won't play through all of these, but we still have J.D. Vance just being an absolute fucking freak. Can't help himself. It's like every couple of days, some new unsurfaced podcast clip from 5 years ago comes out where he's just trash talking women who don't have kids. In this one, he was posted by Kamala HQ. J.D. Vance attacks women who can't have kids. Not women who don't have kids, women who can't have kids because they, quote, passed the biological period when it was possible. And he says that they are miserable people who have no real value system and struggle to find meaning. Good luck with this, man. I mean, good luck with this. J.D. Vance, there's a reason why his approval rating is so much lower than everybody else's. If you look at the approvals of Kamala, Tim Walz, Trump, and Vance, Vance is always at the bottom of the list. It usually goes, Walz is the most popular, Kamala is the second most popular, Trump is the third, and then Vance is like way down below in fourth. And it might be, might have something to do with this kind of shit. We also have, I didn't play this clip. For some reason, I didn't get around to covering it on the channel, but, let's just go ahead and finish off watching this because this was amazing. This is J.D. Vance trying to do I would say normal politician things where he's going to a local shop and he's trying to interact with the workers and just trying to seem like a normal person. But this is really just normal human things. And he struggles to do normal human things, to act like a human being, a person, right? Instead of some, alien creature, okay, who's never interacted with a person before. So let's go ahead and watch him at this donut shop and just see how he handles this.
The zoo has come to town. Thank you for letting us come in here.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I'm sorry, man? Okay, yeah. She doesn't want to be on film, guys, so just cut her out of anything. Appreciate that, man. I'm JD Vance. I'm running for vice president. Good to see you.
Okay.
How long have you worked here?
I've been here since the beginning of July
Okay.
of this year.
Okay, good. How about you, sir?
What is that haircut, by the way? What is this?
Good. Just everything. Yeah, I mean, a lot of glazed here, some sprinkle stuff, some of these cinnamon rolls, just whatever. How long has this place been around?
About 4 years.
About 4 years? Okay. How long have you been here?
A little over 6 months.
Okay, good.
Oh my God. Okay. So your job there, JD, your job was to go into the donut shop, have a little chit chat back and forth, casual with the workers, to order some donuts, and then to leave. That was it. It was just going to be like a photo op, short little interaction thing, like a 20-second clip for your social media feed, whatever. And it turns into that. First off, it doesn't seem like his team even like made the donut shop aware that they were coming, because the woman behind the counter didn't even know who he was. He says, "I'm JD Vance. I'm running for vice president." She's like, "Okay." And he's like, "How long have you worked here?" She tells him, "Okay." "Oh, and how long have you worked here, sir?" "Oh, okay." "And how long has the place been here?" He's like, "Okay." And then he asks a third person, "How long have you worked here?" Did you like forget the script at home? Like, I'm trying to figure out how you get to this spot as a person. How are you this bad at this? You're not only a person, you're a politician. You're supposed to be good at this kind of thing. Interacting with people, shaking hands, right? Being a little bit charismatic. He is a charisma void. He is a charisma black hole. He is nothing. He is nothing. He's trying to order donuts, okay? Have you ever seen a donut before, JD? Have you ever witnessed what a donut is? "Oh, give me some, some of the sprinkle stuff and whatever makes sense." I don't know, man. Just list a donut. List any donut. They'll give it to you, okay? Be a person. Be a human being. One more thing here, and we'll end off the video. This is him. I guess he was at some, like, UAW event. He gets called out, and she's like, "Is this your first time here?" And just watch their hands here. Watch him attempt a handshake fist bump. Oh. Oh.
Good to see
No.
you.
Oh, he didn't want it either.
First time here. Yep.
Thank you for coming.
Of course.
It's just everything, man. It's everything he does. It's who he is. Man, he might be worse than Sarah Palin. He might be the single worst VP pick in modern history. That's not an exaggeration. It's really not. And Tim Walz might be one of the best VP picks in modern American history. So I don't know. Again, we looked at the polling data. It's a 50-50 split. There are a couple key issues that are going to be at play: the economy, abortion, immigration, obviously Joe and Kamala's ongoing support for a genocide in Gaza. There are a lot of factors, a lot of things that could go sideways, change on a dime, but it's heating up. It's heating up because, by the way, guys, I believe in the next couple of days, voting is actually going to start. Like, we're having the earliest stages of mail-in voting. That's starting. So November might seem like far off. It might seem like we've been talking about this forever, but it's really sneaking up on us.
Politic guy has the best politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me. Everyone is saying